Hey, I'm Ben Marshall, and I like to share woodworking tips, tricks, and how-tos on this channel every month. If that's something that interests you, make sure you subscribe. In this video, I'm going to show you how to zero the guide rail on the MFT3 to work in conjunction with the Festool trimming attachment. As most of my subscribers already know, I absolutely love the Festool Kapex trimming attachment when used on the MFT3 because it really expands your cross-cutting capacity. What's important to note about this process is that when you zero the guide rail to the trimming attachment, you are accounting for the offset of the blade, meaning that whatever measurement you put your flag stop on and you're using it in conjunction with the guide rail, it's going to be that exact measurement. You don't have to worry about adding or subtracting measurements to your materials to account for the width of the blade. So having said that, let's get started. Okay, some materials that you're going to need in order to do this process. The first is being that obviously we're going to need the track saw with whatever saw blade you're going to be intending to use on the MFT3. It should be either a general purpose or a cross-cutting blade. Pick your poison, whichever one it is you want. Just make sure that that blade is installed on your track saw. Next, we're going to want to have some scrap wood. It needs to be at least 300 millimeters or 12 inches long. Again, depending on, it's just however long you want it. It could be 2 feet if you want. It could be 400 millimeters. The next is we're going to need some type of a large square. The larger the better because it's going to give us more accurate measurements or it's going to give us a more accurate setup. Here I'm using the GRS 16 PE from TSO, and I actually throw it down on my guide rail and use it to line up on the fence. It makes it incredibly quick and relatively accurate for what we're trying to do. And the last thing that we're going to need is a torque set with a T15 key. Before we get started into the things that we're going to need, I want to point out that you do want to have the trimming attachment set up in line with your existing MFT3 fence. If you do not know how to do that and you would like to see how to do that, you can click to the video in the card above that will show you how to properly attach the trimming attachment to the MFT3 while also making sure that it is in line with your current MFT3 fence. So with my 300 millimeter cut scrap piece, I'm going to set my flag stop to 300 millimeters on the trimming attachment, and I'm going to go ahead and nestle that inside against the flag stop. I'm going to drop my guide rail down, and I'm going to come to the top of the MFT3 where the guide rail is, and I'm going to lift this up just a little bit, maybe an inch or so. And that's going to allow me to dip the blade down with my track saw. Now it's important to note that with the track saw, it's unplugged from all power sources because we are going to be exposing the blade. Okay. And once we have this set up, now I'm going to come into the back of the MFT3. There are 2 adjustment knobs for the guide rail that keep it parallel or keep it set on the MFT3. So I'm going to loosen this knob, and this is going to allow me to shift the guide rail laterally so that way it's in line with my scrap piece. And so I'm going to dip the track saw down, exposing the blade, and make sure my depth is all the way down. And I'm going to dip the blade down, and I want to adjust the guide rail left or right until it just barely touches the end of my 300 millimeter scrap piece. And again, this is going to make sure that my guide rail is at the proper distance away from this flag stop. So if I need to come left or right any, then I would just shift it left or right. And once you have it in place, you're going to want to lock it down and then just double check it again. Okay, and then once I feel like I have it set in place, I'm going to want to lock that tension knob down. And there are these positioning blocks that are in the back of the MFT3 rail. When the MFT3 comes from the factory, it should be set to be 90 degrees on the MFT3. However, because we're offsetting it, because of the Festool Kapex trimming attachment, we're going to have to adjust that. So you're going to want to have an Allen wrench, if you have to adjust these at all, with a T15 Torx wrench. And we're going to loosen that positioning block, and we're going to want to push it and butt it up against the guide rail adjustment right here. And that's going to make sure that if we ever have to take the guide rail off the MFT3, if we're going to put it in the back of a truck, or we're going to, again, take it off for whatever reason, this bracket, this positioning block is going to make sure that the next time we put the fence or the guide rail assembly back on, it's going to be in the exact same spot where we want it so that it's perfectly offset from our trimming attachment. So it's very critical that you loosen that knob up, push it all the way up against the fence locking bracket, and then you tighten that down with a T15. Next, I'm going to take my GRS 16. I'm going to mount it to my fence. We already have the distance set properly at this end of the guide rail, and now we want to make sure that we are setting it at 90 degrees to the mount that's at the other end of the MFT3. So this is why I really like the GRS from TSO. It makes for a really good square setup. Drop that down, drop this in down. And again, it doesn't have to be a TSO. It could be just a regular square, as long as it's an accurate square, and you want to, again, nudge it up against your fence on your MFT3, and then just have it aligned up with your guide rail. And for the opposite end bracket, we're going to make sure that the rail is held square with our square, or in my case, my TSO guide rail square. We're going to move our bracket over until it's in line with the rail, and again, making sure that it's held square. We'll lock it down, lock down the knob, and then move our positioning bracket over. Okay, so that is the down and dirty way to set up the trimming attachments to the MFT3 for accurate cross-cutting measurements using the flag stops. If you want to see how to accurately set up or adjust the MFT3 guide rail to get incredibly accurate 90-degree cuts, make sure you subscribe. In my next video, I'm going to show you how to use the 5-cut method on the MFT3 and how to really adjust the MFT3 guide rail to get more accurate and super clean cuts. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.